Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Locker Room on this Wednesday, September 20th. I'm Alan Locher. Writer Julie Pohl is here this afternoon to look back at her over 20 plus years as a writer for some of your favorite soap operas. Julie most recently wrote for Gregori J. Martin's The Bay, which she received a Daytime Emmy nomination for, and she was also a script writer for As the World Turns. Daytime fans know and treasure Julie's work from the 3 anniversary books she wrote for Another World, As the World Turns, and Guiding Light. These books have become collector's items, and I can't thank you enough, Julie, for leaving us this incredible legacy. It has certainly helped the Locker Room over the last 3 years. Some of her other soap opera credits include General Hospital, a daily dose of your favorite soap calendar. Julie was a consultant for SOAPnet on their launch of Another World, Days of Our Lives, and The Young and The Restless, and a consulting producer for the 35th Annual Daytime Emmys. Julie is a script reader for the Meryl Streep funded New York Women in Film and Television Writers Lab and the Austin Film Festival, as well as a script analyst for Coverfly, a platform that helps writers prepare their scripts for submission. Julie sits on the Daytime Emmys Advisory Panel and is a judge on the Emmy Blue Ribbon Panels, judging the daytime drama category. She is a lifetime member of the WGA and NATAS. I am so excited to welcome Julie Pohl to the Locker Room. Hi, Julie.
I am excited to be here.
Well, there's big hellos from Jalori Hurst and Maria Ferrari.
Whoa.
They are watching right now and say hello.
Yes.
Before we get started, I wanted to just acknowledge the passing of Kaylee Haynes, who I know helped you on Guiding Light's The Complete Family album. I met her when I was a fan of Guiding Light and then reconnected on Facebook many years later. And she was at Soap Weekly and Soap Opera Now, I believe. What do you remember most about Kaylee?
I was so sad when I heard that she passed away. She was so young and has a young daughter. Because she had come from the soap opera magazines, she was a big help, her contributions to the book, because she could really fill in the gaps on the shows. So I was very lucky to have her, as a collaborator.
There's a lot of fans who, like myself, met her through Guiding Light and the other shows, but I know that she bonded with so many fans over her love of Quint and Nola. I didn't remember that personally, but it was nice to read that. Oh, Colleen Zink says hello as well, Julie. Hi, Colleen.
Hello back.
I know that you attended Ms. Eileen Fulton's 90th birthday party last Wednesday on Zoom. How was that? What was she like?
It was wonderful. I mean, Eileen is as feisty as ever. Right? It was so much fun. And actually, Colleen was there.
Yeah.
Many people from
Margaret
that world.
Reed. Right, Margaret Reed. Right.
So we celebrated her in the manner she should be celebrated. Right?
That's terrific. And she definitely deserves it. She definitely deserves it. The love that she received also on social media from fans was beautiful. She is dearly missed on screen, as is Colleen.
Both. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Both of them were such big parts of the show for so long.
Amen to that, for sure. Well, speaking of acting, you told me you started out as an actress. Who or what influenced your desire to become one?
Well, I guess I always grew up, liking theater and TV and movies. And I moved to New York to go to the neighborhood playhouse, which was a very exciting experience. We had Sandy Meisner teaching acting, Martha Graham, all method acting. And after that, I made the rounds and, had a lot of auditions, did Anne Frank at a lot of places.
And where did you move from, Julie? Where did you move?
I'm from Baltimore.
Okay.
And I always wanted to live in New York. So I actually didn't tell my parents that I was auditioning for the Playhouse. So after I got in, I told them, my dad said, well, if you're going to live in New York, you have to live at the Barbizon for Women.
Okay.
So, and that was a great experience because so many actresses and dancers, and
you must have bumped into a lot of famous people there, because it really was the place for women to be, right?
Yeah, it was a very creative community. But then I gave up acting after I had auditioned with Keir Dullea, who had been on Guiding Light. We were actually at the Playhouse together. And it was for a wonderful Frank Perry movie called David and Lisa. And there were 3 of us in the running, and I didn't get it. So I thought, that's it. I changed careers and I segued into writing, which is actually just so good for after being an actor, you can kind of hear in your ear what works and what doesn't. So it's wonderful training for being a writer.
How did you segue? Was writing something you were always interested in? Did somebody make a suggestion?
Well, actually, my first jobs after I had my children, I worked for the Muppets, which was really great. But I was more or less a floater in the different departments. Then I worked Live from Lincoln Center, which couldn't get far enough away from soap opera. Right? And then I got a job on as a PA, actually doing production work on Love, Sydney, which was a sitcom that Tony Randall did in New York briefly. And interestingly enough, Swoosie Kurtz played a soap opera actress, and Betty White played a head writer. But Tony wanted the show in New York because he had the National Theater. But they brought in all these Hollywood producers and executive producers, and they all hated New York. And there's so much talent here. So after 3 months, the show went back to California. And I didn't want to move because I had a young family, so I didn't want to disrupt their lives. And that's when I met Malee Taggart, because our daughters were together at the School of American Ballet.
I love that. I mean, it really is the beautiful essence of New York City, the fact that you bump into somebody taking your children to school and it leads to a job as a writer's assistant at As the World Turns.
But it's funny, she said, well, it's a part-time job. Let me tell you, nothing in soap opera is a part-time job.
That is
not at all.
That is 100%
but it was
accurate.
So good because I got to learn the nitty-gritty of soap operas. I had to keep huge tracking books of the action and the characters because, everybody's related to everybody else on the show. And also the tracking was very complicated. There's
continuity,
And there's that famous story on All My Children where they sent the boy upstairs to do his homework and he never came down.
Yeah.
So tracking is very important. Right?
100%. And you told me this backstage, which is really shocking, and I think will be shocking to everybody watching who doesn't know you personally, that you did not grow up watching either Another World, As the World Turns, or Guiding Light.
Right.
And you wrote these incredible books about these shows that were on the air for decades. What was it like working for Malee at that time?
Oh, it was great. I mean, it was a very creative atmosphere. She and Tom King were the head writers. And I got to write the story notes. Also, they sent me to meetings where focus groups were deciding who should, be in particular parts, watching the screen tests. But mostly I did also wrote the story notes. And what they did, they chauffeured us all up to the P&G offices in New Jersey. And it was the head writers, the executive producer, the suits from the network. And they sat and discussed story for 2 days. And I had to write it up in story form, also making sure that I got all the important people's story comments in the writing. So from that, Malie gave me
a lot of voices. That,
oh my gosh, yes.
chiming into their opinions about what was to happen.
Right. So from there, Malie gave me a sample script. And that's how I started, because 2 scenes from my sample script made it into a script that aired.
Do you remember what they were?
Oh, I remember vividly. Right? Meg Ryan had just left the show to go to Hollywood.
Yeah.
And they recast with Lindsay Frost. And Malie was adamant. She said, we're not going to kill Betsy. So they put her, she was in an automobile accident. And 3 months later, the bandages came off and she was Lindsay Frost. And the first lines I wrote, Betsy came home, picked up the phone, and called Ellen Stewart and said, Grandma, I'm home.
I probably watched. I remember when Meg left and Lindsay came on.
Yeah.
What was it like to hear your, words come out on screen?
It was beyond exciting. It really was. But, in true soap opera fashion, that was my first soap opera job. A couple of months later, Tom and Malie left the show. 13 weeks, which is the cycle that your contract is, we were all gone. But I was lucky enough to come back and write for the show when Doug Marlin was head writer. And that was a huge career highlight.
I know. We will talk Doug in just a second. First of all, I didn't realize P&G had offices at that time in New Jersey.
They did.
Yeah, I had no idea. I love that. Because that's where I'm at right now. Were you learning, the continuity then? Were you reading books then to be up to speed, in those early days of being Malie's, writer's assistant? And then
I had lots of, they sent me a lot of back material, because when the show was syndicated, then the tapes and scripts were available. And then before that, I did a lot of, for the books, of course, do a lot of research going back. But I had to be totally up on, the family connections, which is really tricky on a soap.
Well, and the soap that's been on
as my father, he's my cousin, he's right.
Yes, but a show like that's been on so long. I love this question from Floyd. Were those story meetings in New Jersey very heated? I would probably gather that's a yes.
They were.
When you have, more than one voice in a room giving their opinion, it's likely going to get heated, especially when it's involving story, ratings, money.
The whole thing going on, between the soap opera people and the network people.
And P&G people.
Yeah, and P&G people.
Yes, CBS, P&G, the writers, producers, lots of voices in that one room. As you mentioned, you were lucky to be called back in 1990 and working for the legend himself, Doug Marlin. In the book, you describe him as a mentor and friend. Can you talk about what you learned and what you miss most about Doug?
Oh my goodness, I get goosebumps. It was just, he was a remarkable storyteller. And
did you know that before you, when you were brought back, did you know who Doug was?
I knew who he was, but I didn't know, his background. I knew his reputation.
Okay.
Really. But he gave story notes. I don't think any other the soaps did this. When you were a writer on his staff, everything was over the phone. because he had been an actor and he like had to hear everything. So you would get these long notes, and you never knew when he was going to quite call you because, Monday person first, we all wrote a day of the week. So Monday person first, second, whatever. So there was this thing where we had to be home to get those notes. And the only time you knew you could go to the grocery store or the bank was when Doug watched the show, because every day he religiously watched the show.
I knew that's what you were going to say. That's incredible.
But because he was such a wonderful storyteller, it was really a privilege to be on his staff. And then, he died suddenly of a brain aneurysm.
Yeah, his Bibles were of legend.
They were, and longer than most shows' Bibles.
Yeah, John Wesley Shipp talks about reading the whole Douglas Cummings story.
Right.
From beginning to end. It really is incredible how we talk about Douglas still today, the impact that he had on the show. What do you remember most about the time, when he had the aneurysm, and then, all of those changes that came after?
Oh my gosh, I was one of the last writers he talked to, actually.
Oh God.
And it was a lot of change. I stayed with the show for a couple of years, and Doug had a way of keeping a staff together, which is not usually the normal on a soap opera writing staff. I think now it is, but then they were like rotating writers, but he kept a staff together. And, so after he had passed away, Julia Packer, who I had initially written with when we were initially on the show together, we were actually hired and fired together, right?
Oh, God.
And it was like, I've never been fired before. So, Juliet said, get used to it. This is soap operas, right? But anyway, they took over as head writers for a while. And there were a lot of changes, there were. And it certainly wasn't the same, but, the show survived.
It definitely did, but he was missed. I mean, people talk about that immensely. What do you think you learned most from him?
I think how to tell an ongoing story, because soap opera, shows are like no other. It's the novel that never ends. And you have to keep all the stories going. And there's really an art to that. I mean, you have your A story, your B story, your C story, but they all have to keep going at the same time.
And intertwine them.
Right.
And he did it so beautifully.
Oh, beautifully, really beautifully. So I really learned the art of really writing for a soap from him, even though I'd done it before, but, this was a different experience.
You also wrote scripts for Loving and Days of Our Lives. Who were the head writers during your time with both shows?
Oh, well, with Loving, I had done some sample scripts, and I wasn't on the show too long. Days of Our Lives, I did some things for SOAPnet for them. I never actually wrote for the show, but I did when I was working for SOAPnet, and they were going on the air. I again had to do all the backstory and the love relationships and all of that, right?
The research.
Yeah. A lot of research.
Yeah, absolutely. So much research.
Yeah.
And the internet didn't necessarily exist at that time to make it a little easier.
No. I mean, when I first did breakdowns, happily, I lived near the studio. I live on 78th Street. The studio then was on 76th Street. I had to run the breakdowns over to the studio, get them copied, and then run to FedEx. And there was always competition. Like Betty Ray was always there, needing sides to be printed out. And it's like, you don't interfere with Betty Ray, right? But I had to get the scripts to FedEx by a certain time. So yeah, it was a whole process before the internet.
Do you have a favorite story that you worked on during Doug's time there?
Oh gosh. Well, I love the John Dixon. I loved his storylines, which were always so interesting. And he and Elizabeth Hubbard, when they got together,
Yeah, they were fantastic.
they just jumped off the screen. And she was
Agreed.
wonderful. She was, who sadly recently passed away,
Yeah.
but she was an electric actress.
Oh, they were both together,
Yeah.
individually and together. They were both incredible.
But Doug's favorite family was the Snyder family, which was really mirrored on his family. So, and Emma was his favorite, played by Kathleen Widows, was his favorite character. The mother of the whole.
They all came on during his time there.
Yeah.
And you could see the love because they really, first of all, he cast amazing actors as every Snyder, and they all had really great story, interesting story.
Oh, all of them. Yes.
All of them, interesting story. Not all the same, all different, but they were, an incredible group of talented actors portraying that family.
Very much so. The Lily Holden story was front and center then.
Yeah.
That was wonderful.
Yeah.
It was really like one of those ongoing love stories. And he also, soap act characters do not stay married for very long. Tom and Margot, I think, had the longest running marriage on As the World Turns.
They do.
So
I don't know. They did when the show went off. I don't know if they still do today, but they did. They were one of the longest running married couples on daytime TV.
Which is very unusual.
That is true. Usually a married couple is a boring couple. But
they say if they're married for more than 2 months, they get boring. Got to do something else with them, right?
Absolutely. Well, most recently, you were nominated for Outstanding Writing Team for your work on season 3 of The Bay with Gregori J. Martin. Talk about your work on The Bay. I believe Gregori told me that was the year that was Sarah Garrett's trial, the start of the Pete and Vivian love story,
right?
Janice's suicide, and Daniel's coming out.
It was quite a year. And Gregori, again, he was like, working with him reminded me of working with Doug, because he had that same ability to weave stories, and he was so enthusiastic that he just drew you in to be just as enthusiastic. And we did wonderful stories. That was the year that, Sarah Garrett was, they thought that she was the one that had killed her uncle, was the senator. Yeah. So there was lots of trials going on there, and he got wonderful actors.
Oh my God, he's got a great cast. But I love how you just compared him to Doug, because Gregori does have that incredible enthusiasm for the medium. Another World was one of his favorites. Santa Barbara.
Right.
I believe his love of soap started with Dynasty, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
But he really does have a passion that I wish every executive producer had for the genre.
Exactly. You are so right. And he used wonderful actors. Some that, like Jackie Zeman, you saw her very rarely on GH. She was wonderful in The Bay. She played the mayor's wife. And
she's still on it. She will be on it in the new season. Which
I'm so happy about.
I know, which is great for fans of Jackie's to get to still see her.
Yeah.
Her last on-air role will be the Bay.
Yeah.
And not GH, unfortunately. But,
Yeah. But lots of wonderful actors, Nicholas Costa,
Yeah.
And it was really exciting because being working on a soap opera is like no other medium. As a writer, you have to write very fast. As an actor, sometimes they have to learn like 30 pages of dialogue in a night. So just to keep that going at that pace. And I know some movie actors that they bring on to soaps just can't hack it.
100%, 100%. What was it like writing for the Bay, having done, World Turns at such a different time, and just the different style of how soaps are being told? I mean, scenes when you were working for Doug, let's say, were much longer.
Oh, yes.
Today, the scenes go very quickly.
And one of the things that made a difference is that the Bay is streamed.
Right. Yeah.
That's very different as opposed to writing for a network show. First of all,
what made it different? That the involvement.
Yeah, because like on a network soap, there was a staff of breakdown writers, and the breakdowns got sent to the dialogue writers to dialogue. So there were really like two people writing for one show. Right. I always preferred the breakdown part because you get more to contribute to the show. And those are the very intricate scene scripts. But on the Bay, and I think because it was streaming, we did both in the same time frame.
So were you writing, let's say for Monday's show, you would write the breakdown for Monday and the script for Monday?
Right. Exactly. And I was the only.
That's interesting because it gives that episode definitely more the Julie Pohl voice, because a breakdown, if you're the script writer on what Julie wrote, you have to sort of, write the dialogue to what your idea for that day is. But this is
exactly
all of your idea.
I know. I really like the process of doing both.
Was it daunting?
But again, the short time frame, right?
Was it daunting?
It was daunting. It was. And also streaming, I mean, there's a whole different rhythm really to a show that's streamed, because you're not like you're writing to commercial on a network.
Right.
And you're very aware, like every scene that's going into a commercial break needs a tag that you're going to bring them back.
Yeah.
So it's really a different. It's more like an ongoing thing.
I love your description of it. I love hearing that, because I didn't know that that's how. I don't know if every streaming but I didn't know that that's how Gregori did it. Like one writer doing both the breakdown and. But I would assume with Gregori and the team for the Bay that it's a very collaborative place.
Oh, very. We had Wendy Rich, who's the executive producer.
Yeah.
Which was great. I was the only one in New York. They were all in California. So I would have to Zoom into the meetings. And Gregori would have these wonderful dinners for everybody in California. And I would be there just, on my computer. Good, right? But it was a very different experience. But it was comfortable in the sense that I was working with people that knew the soap opera medium.
I mean, Wendy knows the soap medium. Gregori knows.
Oh, yes.
She definitely does. Well, as I said in the intro, you wrote 3 enduring books for Procter & Gamble. As the World Turns came first in 96, Guiding Light in 97, followed by Another World in 99. Talk about the genesis of how these books, I mean, World Turns being the first one, how they came, the idea for them came about.
Well, it's because I had written for As the World Turns in 2 different kind of time frames. It was Ken Fitz who came to me and said, would you like to write an anniversary book? They were just approaching the 40th anniversary of the show. And I said, sure. But the thing that made it daunting was, you had to write the entire storyline. But I had wonderful researchers. I had Fritz Breckler, I had Kaylee, and they really helped me put the narrative together. John Reed was another one. And then the part that I really loved, which was so different than writing for the soaps, the second half of the book was the interviews with the actors and behind the scenes. So when you write for a show, they don't like you coming to the studio because they think that actors are going to try to influence storylines that they want you to write for them.
I can't imagine what you're talking about, Julie.
Right. So they keep you apart from the studio.
Yeah.
So writing the books, I got to meet the actors and interview them, and
I will come back to that in just a second. Ken comes to you with this idea, knowing the show had been on 40 years. I would have probably gone running out the room the other way. Did you know that Fritz and Kaylee and all those people would be able to help you piece this together?
No.
Was it daunting?
It was daunting, but I have to give a shout out to my editor, Peter Huffman. He had done the General Hospital book before all of this.
Okay.
And I know, I accepted the job, and then I thought, how do you do that? Right? How do you write a whole book of the whole show? So anyway, Peter and I met, and he showed me the GH book, and how to, when we were, we worked together.
How it was going to be pieced together per se.
Right.
And then you started, the process of talking to Fritz and everybody else.
Right. Exactly.
Wow.
But
I think I would panic thinking of, trying to articulate, 40 years of, what went on in Oakdale would be a really scary.
Oh yeah. But happily too, there were actors who've been on the show for a long time, and but it was daunting. And then when you write a book, there's a certain page count that you have to come into, or becomes more expensive, and so it's very hard to cut back on that storyline.
Yeah.
Piece
sure.
Really
my God. Well, I want to read you a few things and we'll continue. But Candace Max says, hi, everyone. Just wanted to hop on real quick to say hello, and also thank you to Miss Julie for the wonderful books. I still have all 3 and wish there were more. And I know many people wish there were more. I'm going to read from Greg. Greg says, I cherish these books. I had so many questions finding As the World Turns on my own as a teen. Are Lily and Holden related? Who exactly is Ryder Hughes or Scott Eldridge? Why should I be happy that my naturalistic soap is bringing someone named James Stenbeck back from the dead again? This cleared everything up from day one for me. Ken says, I look for the Another World and As the World Turns books online all the time. Luckily, my prize Guiding Light book is front and center on my coffee table. And Andrew said, someone gifted me the As the World Turns book. It made piecing together the story through the scattered available episodes on YouTube so easy. You, for As the World Turns, you had Ms. Helen Wagner. You had Jerry Verdorn for Guiding Light, and Victoria Wyndham, who wrote the forwards for all 3 books.
Yeah.
How lucky did you feel to have them? Did you pick? Did the EPs pick? How did that? Do you remember how that came to be?
Well, actually, if I remember correctly, the publications picked in conversation with the studios, but I was a big part of that because they wanted iconic characters to do the intro, and all 3 of them were such iconic characters. I mean, Helen was amazing. do you know she was on the show until she passed away? In her whole career there, she missed only 4 days of work.
It's incredible.
She was,
I mean, you know,
amazing.
she was there, you know, the year we went off the air, and you know, would have said the final words if she had lived through the end. You know, to open "Good Morning, Dear" and to end would have been incredible. Incredible. And you know, Jerry was such an integral part, and really, you know, the voice of Guiding Light, I think, before that book came out. And so he really was perfect to write.
He was perfect to do the intro. Absolutely.
Yeah. He also, Jerry has a great way with words, had a great way with words. You know, he did. He wrote me a few times the last couple of years, and he has had a great way with words. And then Victoria Wyndham, you know, people keep asking me to interview her for this show, and you know,
she was iconic, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. The executive producers, John Valenti, Paul Rausch, and Christopher Gantman. So John for As the World Turns, Paul for Guiding Light, and Chris for Another World.
Yeah.
You know, what was their input in what you were doing and putting together?
Well, I have to say, Paul Rausch was intimidating, right?
You think? I could second that.
I walked into his office and he was smoking a cigar.
Yeah, I knew that's where you were going.
Right? He says, I don't care if you mind cigar smoke. I'm going to smoke anyway. Right? Anyway, but yeah, he knew the show very well. And he, you know, he gave me a lot of interesting notes, but he was kind of intimidated.
Yeah, Chris, I think anybody who worked for Paul probably felt that at some point. The actors probably felt that at some point. And what was it like having access to all three shows? You know, being able to go on set.
Oh, that was so exciting. It really, really was, because then I got to really, you know, see the inner workings of how it worked. And for the books, you know, I did the behind the scenes sections. So you went into hair and makeup, you went to rehearsals. So you saw the whole assembly line of what it takes to put a show together and all the moving parts that have to come together in a show. So that was really, I loved the experience of doing that. And of course, when I did Another World, that they had then moved to Brooklyn, to the studios there.
Took a little longer to get there.
Yes. Right.
Took a little longer to get there. You know, when you get, how do you know when you were done?
Oh,
and I don't mean done of, you know, when it was going to print, but like, how did you know you had enough?
Well, again, there's a pretty strict page count, so that I knew I couldn't go over, and that kind of keeps you in bounds. But that part of it is daunting, because you want to tell the whole story. And when you're interviewing the actors, you want to get in all the anecdotes and, you know, all the unusual, unique things that they brought to a role, and think about things about their life. So it was daunting to keep within a certain page count, but I had to.
Yeah, I'm sure. The
honestly,
editor,
you can never be finished, right?
Yeah, you would not be finished. That's true. You know, many times as the person doing PR, actors might say no to me in doing something. Were there any actors who you really wanted, but they were not cooperative to sit down?
Well, Mara West at the beginning, but she had just come onto the show onto World Turns. I know now she's front and center on GH.
She is.
So, but normally the actors were pretty welcoming. It took a long time. It took a long time to get Roger Thorpe.
Michael Zaslow.
See how I know the character? I know the right character names to get Michael Zaslow to do an interview. I remember that took a number of tries, and I think he was just at the beginning of not being well then. Because
the book. So I joined August of '97, and he left in '90 shortly, like maybe late '96, early '97, because I came in August. And the book came out in '97. So absolutely. You worked, I assume the PR teams on all three shows helped you line up those interviews?
Oh, a lot, yes. And Maria Ferrari was invaluable in getting all the pictures and clearing all the pictures. I had to get the pictures, but she had the daunting job of clearing them, right? And I always wanted more pictures in the book.
100%. I still want more pictures today. I mean, it is really, I know, arriving there in August of '97, photography and holding on to files was not something CBS or P&G did well.
No,
sadly. They didn't. Really, it was, something I definitely took serious because first of all, I love photography. First of all, it is important to have that history. And it is a shame. It is a shame for these shows when you think of their longevity that people, who are doing projects like you were doing have a difficult time to find photographs to demonstrate the history.
Oh, yeah, it was so hard. And I dealt with some of the photographers to get, that's how I actually got a lot of the pictures.
Right.
Like from E.J. Carr had done a lot for World Turns.
But I think when I joined, I don't know, it might have been Cheryl who was my boss at the time before I took over. I'm not sure, but we started owning the pictures. Yeah, right. E.J. Carr, shout out Maria says to E.J. Well, thank you, E.J. But it is incredible that P&G didn't really own a lot of their own.
It was amazing to me that they didn't.
It's incredible. I find, and I think, you had mentioned syndication, I think backstage, but Sentieri in Italy, they have, a fan club and they post a lot of stuff on Instagram. And I'm blown away when I see their photographs because I think they must have had access to things that we just didn't when I was working there. They have.
Yeah, and they're huge Guiding Light fans.
They have a great catalog of photographs, it seems. I don't know if they were from us or they just collected them from magazines, but they have an incredible. Do you talk about each book? So As the World Turns, is there a favorite interview?
Oh my gosh. I guess I could say it was my favorite book to write because I had written for the show and I was like intimately involved in the storylines. But thinking of favorite interviews, let's see.
And it doesn't have to be an actor. It could be something a production person gave you too, if something comes to mind.
Well, Elizabeth Hubbard was wonderful, right? She was really wonderful. Martha Byrne gave me, we had lunch and she gave me a lot of wonderful stories because she had been with the show for so long. She really kind of grew up with the show. So it was really, I loved interviewing her.
A wealth of knowledge.
On Guiding Light, Ron Raines was wonderful. Right?
Oh, I love that.
He was such an expansive personality. He just brought you in. Right? So that was a highlight. And Kim, of course. You can't get better than Kim Zimmer.
No. And, played such a big part, Ron Raines, Alan Spaulding, Reva Shane, Lily, who you just, Lucinda, such iconic characters to those shows. Did you get to speak to Lisa Brown?
I didn't. I don't know why, but I didn't. I mean,
Yeah,
maybe.
interesting. I wonder. Yeah.
I wish I had, because that was a great Doug storyline of her being Lily's mother and,
On both
coming up against.
shows,
Yeah, yeah,
he created two iconic, characters for her.
yeah, yeah. So I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to interview her, but interviewing the actors was fun because you got to hear about, their audition stories and,
Yeah, I
and
love that
then,
at the end of the book, a lot of the, alumni that you spoke to and different things in each book. For Another World, is there a favorite interview?
oh, let's see. Oh, well, Carl Hutchins, right? We had our interview at Sardi's
Oh, how nice.
over a couple of drinks, right? But I have to say, speaking of interviews now, it's coming back to me. James Stenbeck.
Anthony Herrera. Oh, I can only imagine what that was like.
This was so funny. We're going to have the interview over dinner because that's what he wanted. So let me tell you, Alan, he just kept drinking. Right? We never got to dinner. I don't even remember how many drinks we had during this interview. Right?
Oh, God.
He was a character. He was really a character.
Talk about intimidation. That's somebody I felt.
Know.
Yeah, I felt nervous around. And speaking of that as well, I don't think I've shared this much because I don't have the complete memory, but I was an intern at Regis and Kathy Lee when they were local in New York. And I remember trying to get Michael Zaslow on the show and spoke to him on the phone. And I was definitely, I was 18, 19 years old, and it was Roger Thorpe. I was very intimidated. And then working with Anthony when I was, a young man was still intimidating as, knowing it was James Stenbeck.
He was intimidating, right? But he and Colleen had a wonderful storyline together.
God.
He left her in the bull ring in one storyline. Right?
In Spain. You're not kidding. You're not kidding. Did you watch? You knew a lot about World Turns, but for Another World and Guiding Light, how much did you watch as you?
Oh, I quickly tuned in and watched every day.
You were at the time you were writing. You were watching every day.
Oh yes. And
you said you got a lot of stuff from P&G archives as well.
Yeah,
right?
and I was able at that point to get back tapes. So
anything you remember that you watched that stood out to you that that maybe fans might remember?
I'm trying to think. I mean,
I know it's a long time ago. Like I said, it's hard to
I know the Reva storylines were always outstanding to watch because she just jumped off the screen. She was so wonderful, and the whole. Remember the scene when her car went off the bridge, and she left the show for a while, but then came back, as they have a way of doing, right? Actually, my favorite story of an actor coming back was Shannon, Margaret Reed on As the World Turns, who played Duncan's wife.
Yeah.
And Duncan's jealous wife, Lilith, came back on the show.
Yeah.
And somehow she kidnapped Shannon and turned her into a shrunken head. And we had a new executive producer after that who came back. He says, I want Shannon back on the show. He said, but she's a shrunken head. And it was like, find a way to make it work. And somehow
Sarah Botsford.
What?
Sarah Botsford, is that who it was?
Oh, who played?
Yeah, I think so. Who played? Yeah, I think so. 100%.
Excuse me.
That was a great.
Think she was the one that played Lilith.
Yeah, it was such a great story.
It was a great story.
And you did Fritz help on all 3 books? So Fritz is a director, I believe, on Young and the Restless, right?
Yeah, he was a great researcher. He was a tremendous help. Yeah.
And he helped on all 3.
He helped me put the storylines together. Yeah.
Wow.
And he was a wonderful researcher because he knew the shows and really good to work with.
I love that. And then
so he was definitely a big part of the books.
Yeah, and you worked with the magazines too, right? The magazines helped, some of the soap magazines.
Yep. I was in touch with all of them and, interviewed all the editors and because.
Do you have any idea how many books are out there around?
Oh, how many of I
like
don't.
Yeah, I'm curious that we sold on these shows.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I had a number, but the first 2 books were done with General Publishing.
Okay.
And then General Publishing went out of business. So the Another World book was HarperCollins. And for a while, they were all available at the Paley Center. And now you can find them online. But for a while, they were in bookstores.
Yeah.
And of course, I bought up a number of copies, right, to have and, to send the people that might. Yeah,
we're gonna autograph. We're gonna auction a Guiding Light book for the Jerry Verdurn Scholarship Fund.
Right.
At the Bradley Cole concert in October, on October 7th. So
what a wonderful thing to do, Alan.
Yeah. Well, the Jerry Verdurn Scholarship Fund helps send kids on the autism spectrum to theater camps because Jerry loved theater. And so what better way than to honor Jerry that way?
That is wonderful. That is very special. It is.
What is it like right now? I know the WGA is meeting today, finally.
I know. I'm so happy they've, resumed talks. Right? I do believe in, what the writers are striking for, being a writer myself, because again, streaming, which was my experience on the Bay, is a totally different experience, and you don't get residuals. And the shows are rerun a lot on streaming.
We can watch them at any hour of any day.
Right. So I really, sadly, people have left the business because of that.
Because of streaming?
It's harder to make a living as a writer. And, and I'm sure the actors have a point too. And of course, AI is something that I think scares us all, right?
Scares us all, it does. Do you have another book in you?
Oh, I think so, right? I know it's funny, for a while I was working with Helen Wagner. We were going to do a whole history of her history as an actress along the lines with her history on the show. And then she passed away. So I was working with her for a while. And I worked with Eileen for a while. Eileen had a whole series of mystery books.
Yeah. I remember.
That had come out. So we were talking about doing a book, but somehow it never came to fruition. But I think more than books, I'm more involved in the script writing end.
Yeah, talk about what you're doing with the Meryl Streep organization.
This is so interesting. Meryl formed it with New York Women in Film, a member of New York Women in Film.
And she did it recently. Am I not mistaken? Hasn't been around that long.
No, she announced it at the Tribeca Film Festival about 3 years ago.
Yeah, because I recall hearing about it.
But she had a stipulation that it was only for women screenwriters over the age of 40. And that was her parameters of, so when writers submit their scripts, there's they have to do a whole kind of history.
Oh, interesting. But, and you get to read what's submitted to the organization?
Oh, yeah, like we have it. There's a team of readers, and yeah, we all read the scripts, sit around and hash them out. Well, lately it's been on Zoom hashing them out. And the Writers Lab is more, it's a contest. So out of the number of scripts, and I can tell you when Meryl announced this, we got over 3,000 submissions for scripts. And out of those submissions, there are 12 finalists. And the finalists get to go to a retreat and work with established writers and producers on developing their scripts to get them more ready to submit. So it's a really interesting process, but it's hard. I can tell you it's hard narrowing down those scripts.
Yeah. So what do you do? Does the panel all read the same scripts and talk about what you've read, or how does that work?
Well, as we got so many scripts, it was, two readers would read the same script and talk about it with, between us, and then we would bring that to the meeting.
Wow.
And at the meeting, you get to decide the final pick. And the head of it, Elizabeth Caden and Nitsa, are very, they were the ones that formed this. So it usually comes, they're, of course, a major part of the final selection.
Right. It started 3 years ago. Have any of those been made, into films yet?
Yeah, we get newsletters from them, and there's some in production. I don't think there's been an actual film yet, but some have been picked up for production.
Oh, that's amazing.
Which is so rewarding. Very rewarding.
How did you get involved with it?
I belong to New York Women in Film and Television.
A great organization. I've been.
It is.
I've been a few times. I took Kathy Hayes the year that I think Julianne Moore was recognized there, and we got a picture of Kathy and Julianne many years after.
Oh, wonderful!
It was fun to watch their interaction.
Yeah, no, she was one of our muses. Yes.
Well, Rose Southworth from P&G would always get a table. Right?
I remember Rose very well. Yes.
Ro would get a table at New York Women in Film every year, basically, and I think that's how Kathy and myself went that year.
No, they're a great organization. So when you join, you list what your profession is. And Terry Lawler, who was then the president, asked me if I would enjoy being, or want to be a reader for this. It started out very differently. It started out just by reading the scripts and writing short comments. But then as it grew, it became more. It became more involved with the notes.
Gotcha. Do you watch any serialized show today?
I do. A lot of nighttime, as you know, uses the format of Showtime, of soap operas. And I've been watching. They
always have, haven't they?
I'm still watching Grey's Anatomy, which is into its 15th year.
That is mind-blowing.
But to keep my head in soap operas, I do watch The Bold and the Beautiful.
Okay.
So that's the soap opera that, I keep up with. So I can keep my head in the ongoing story.
I love that. Do you have a favorite story right now on there?
I really like the way they develop stories because, unlike other shows like, General Hospital, which has a big crime family and whatever, Bold and Beautiful is all about family and business relationships. And of course, the family and business relationships are all tied up with each other. But they seem to tell emotional stories.
probably character driven, I would say.
Yeah, very much character driven.
Which is everybody's, it's why I think we all soap lovers fell in love. It's got to start with the character and then go from there.
Oh, yes. And that was one of the things about Doug Marland.
Oh.
I mean, his stories were definitely character driven.
Yeah. 100%. Julie, it was so great to see you. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you. This was great.
I hope you had some fun. I know the fans, you sit in their living room. So I thought it was great for them to hear from you directly.
Well, I did, and I thank you for asking me.
You are so welcome. You have a great rest of your day, and I hope to see you in person very soon.
Me too.
Bye, Julie.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody, for watching today. Thank you to Julie Pohl for spending the hour with us. I also wanted to send my condolences to Billy Miller's friends and family. Billy passed away over the weekend. If anyone is suffering, please, 988 is a crisis hotline. Reach out, check in on your friends. I will see you all next week. Next Wednesday, Michael Park from As the World Turns will sit down with me one-on-one. If you haven't yet subscribed to my YouTube channel, you can do so down below. Turn on the notifications for reminders of all upcoming shows. And I hope if you like today's episode, you click the like button. And remember, audio versions are available to stream on your favorite streaming platform. Have a great weekend, everybody. And I will see you next Wednesday, September 27th with Michael Park.